Hello, and welcome to the Infinite Financial Freedom Podcast, where we empower you with financial literacy and guide you on your journey to financial freedom. I'm Josh Metal, and I'm stoked to kick off 2024 with my friend and today's guest, Roland Cochrun, founder of InDesign Group. Roland has an incredibly fascinating background. He earned his undergraduate degree from Oregon State University. He earned his doctorate degree in physical therapy from Pacific University. He then went on to found, grow, and successfully exit several businesses in the medical field. And Roland's business successes helped him officially escape the rat race, meaning that his passive cash flow and investments exceed his monthly expenses. So he's free, baby. He can live his life however he wants. And today you can find him traveling the world with his beautiful wife, taking incredible pictures on Instagram. I encourage you to follow him there. He also is very much to this day invested in coaching the elite players in the mortgage banking space. So he's retired and on passion, still in the game, coaching and mentoring and helping others try to accomplish what he's accomplished. So Roland, so stoked to have you here today, my friend. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for the intro. It's I think one of the funny things, Oprah said it right. She deals with imposter syndrome to this day, and yeah, I think it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how high you climb on that ladder. It's always uncomfortable to be introduced by somebody when you hear it's like, oh man, I kind of forgot about I did those things, and it's like, ah. But at the same time, too, I think as you climb, it's almost like, oh, those are the things that you're gonna say about me. It's like, nah, those aren't my proudest accomplishments. So it's like it was an honor to be introduced in that capacity by you, but at the same time too, I'm like, man, there's so much other things I want to dive into on this podcast about people that has nothing to do with the long list of surface level accomplishments, right?
Well, dude, it's interesting. As we were kicking off, I mentioned that these podcasts and these conversations go spectacularly well when people are in their hearts,
Mhm.
meaning they come with a giving nature versus in their ego, in their heads. And I didn't mean to anchor you back to your ego if I did that, but I know that you have a long list of accomplishments, and yet you show up for the people you coach, you show up for our industry in your heart. So I think that if you didn't feel a little uncomfortable being set up that way, that there might be a problem. So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
get it,
it'd be
bro.
off brand. It'd be off brand, right?
We
Yeah.
would be off brand. Well, look, let's call out the elephant in the room. Like when people look at you, Roland, they must just think this dude just came out the womb halfway between third base and home plate. He's good looking, he's fit, he's confident, he's a phenomenal speaker, he's financially successful. Like this dude's life must have just been a downhill water slide. So I know that's not true. Tell us a little bit about your journey between, where you were and where you are today.
So I love where you just went with that. So one of the things I'll tell you guys that I just learned this year from one of the intensives that I invested in to improve myself. Um, One of if not the biggest thing that you can learn that creates one of the biggest breakthroughs, not just in business, but in your ability to parent and your ability to be a spouse and your ability to lead others. What this doctor said was to get over the delusion that you had a good childhood. And the reason I say this is the odds of you being raised in an environment where beliefs weren't forced upon you, where the road wasn't
Mm,
paved for you and you were placed and encouraged to go along, someone else's journey. Where your emotions weren't suppressed in the favor of, oh yeah, yeah, but you need to do it anyways. Life's all about doing things you don't want to do. The list goes on and on and on. These things are trauma, and if you take a lot of these various surveys out there that exist, surprisingly, a lot of high achievers will actually score very, very, very high, and a lot of them claim, "Oh, I had a good childhood. I had parents who were always. I had a mom. My mom stayed at home." Again. people focus on trauma being, I'm not being provided for, I'm being abused, and yes, those things are horrible, and they definitely make things much more challenging. But really, the amount of children who are actually raised in an environment where they're listened to and actually create a container is created for them to become the person they were born to be is extremely rare, if maybe not something that happens ever. So I'm glad I like that question, because the truth of the matter is, usually when you see the byproduct of what this individual has turned into, I would say a lot of it has very little to do with what they actually are. I think a lot of successful entrepreneurs actually spend a lot of time undoing a lot of the things that I think people admire about them. I know I have, a lot of, I have a lot of shame really around my net worth, because it was built from a place of anger. It was built from a place of feeling less than. It was built from a dark place, really, of trying to prove something to people. And so I'm really not that proud of it, to be completely honest with you. I think some of my more proud accomplishments are kind of becoming less of those things, because getting while those strategies to become somebody who people liked and somebody who was impressive, and becoming this admired individual, really, Josh, to be honest, all I was doing was creating this bulletproof, how can I create a lot, because I was raised in a childhood where, between my parents and the church that we were a part of, um, I was just constantly told that if things were wrong with me, I need to be more like my brother. Every, Everything was, hey, be different than you are. And
Mm.
so really my whole childhood was, I have a problem, I'm making bad decisions, no one has any interest in what I feel compelled to become. And so quite quickly, around 4, I learned my family was dead to me. I was going to live this double life where I would perform for them, but in my head, the day I
Oh,
hit
wow.
18, I was going to go do what I wanted to do finally. And so really what you see is a lot of a hurt, sad, angry boy trying to create a bulletproof life and a bulletproof look where no one could say anything bad about me. And
Mm.
I did a damn good job of it. And I also only accomplished that. Does that make
Mm.
sense? So my only
For sure.
accomplishment up until, I realized this, which was not that long ago, 4 or 5 years ago, that was my only accomplishment, was, okay, great. Now no one can say anything bad about me in these categories. And that was it. That was all I had to show for my entire life. So, it's an interesting question when you say it, because it was far from perfect, but also I'd also say there's a lot of flaws in my success as well.
Hmm. Well, bro, thanks for sharing that. I mean, I first of all just want to give you empathy. I can imagine that 4-year-old boy making that decision that I have to be separate from my family. I can't be who I really am. I'm going to have to just kind of anchor over here and protect my heart and fake it and until I can get out of here. It's funny you framed it that way, because I think I was 11 or 12, I had a similar I made a similar decision, and not exactly the same, but I decided that the pain of disappointment from a parent was so great that I was not going to allow anybody to get that close to my heart anymore. And the only way to survive was to anchor down and protect that heart and not let anybody in. And I know for me, that was a decision that was a disservice for the following 30 years, and I had to consciously first become aware of that decision that was now holding me back. And then number two, I had to figure out how am I going to unwrap that and get to Josh 2.0. And that was a painful experience for me. So I can only imagine it was the same for you.
Oh yeah, I think it's never fun. It's never fun to realize that you were wrong, especially when you look at the weight that you caused when you were wrong. And the more people you were hurt, the more time you hurt yourself. It's always a tough thing to look at. But you know, you got to look at it if you expect a different outcome, right?
Great point. You got to look at it if you want a different outcome. Well said, dude. Really well said. Well, great. I appreciate you dispelling the myth that you came out of the womb perfect and halfway between third and fourth base. I know a little bit about your history. I know you've had a lot of struggle, and you've fought really hard to get where you are, and you're continuing to figure out, what does the next leg in the journey look like. So let's get into that a little bit. Um, one of the things that fascinates me about you and your history is that you have completely pivoted industries. I mean, from healthcare to business and life coach. I think it's heavy on the life, light on the business, perhaps. Maybe you could get into that. But that pivot and to be successful in two very different industries is interesting to me. So tell me a little bit about how you were able to do that successfully and any clues you might be able to share with us.
Well, it's interesting when people say it that way because I certainly don't see it that way at all. And usually when I have
Hmm.
the opportunity to explain it, other people are like, "Oh, huh, I guess he has a good point there." So what I mean by that, Josh, is the thing that I learned in my first industry, which was healthcare, was initially I went into it thinking, okay, I'm going to become the best. I'm going to become the best in town from a skill set and offering standpoint, and I'm going to have the fanciest looking facility and the best looking logo and the best website, and then I'm going to get business. And so I did all that stuff, and yeah, nobody cared. I mean, like it was like the referral partners were like, "Get this person away from me," and it was like they didn't want to hear about how awesome everything was that I built, how truly because I was convicted. I believed to my core that I had the best offering in town. I believed this to my core, um, and you would think that would matter, right? It didn't. And so like most people, I had to hustle to get every referral and like nonstop, foot on the gas. It was like you're only as good as your last deal, right? And so it was just like on and on and on and on. Well, because failure was just because of my upbringing, failure meant a lot more to me. It was a something I really didn't want to have happen. I couldn't handle that blow to my ego. Um, it was really imperative that I succeeded. So yeah, I did everything to succeed, and it was exhausting. It was a lot of work. But the lesson that I learned, and this is why I've been able to pivot into essentially, I'm getting into another industry right now, and this one's actually taking off even faster than any of the ones before. It kind of keeps happening as I do this, and it's because of just one element only. The truth was, when people finally started sending me referrals, was actually the day that I quit. So I quit. I said, you know what? Because I was in a referral. I'm, in physical therapy, it's 100% referral based. You get your past clients, but I mean, the truth of the matter is, just like in mortgage, people go to the realtor first. No matter what you say, no matter how hard you try to educate, they just go there first, and then they get flipped over. It's just how it goes. So you're second on the food chain. That was my reality, and so I got tired of it. I hated being second on the food chain. It was such a hustle. But the day that I quit, I told my two directors, hey, you direct this location, you do this location. I gave them a nice paycheck to do it. And then I just decided, all right, I'm just going to take some time to figure myself out. Well, I was lonely, right? Because I'm not working all day long. I'm just dorking around doing whatever. So I was still going to the networking groups because I just was starved for connection. And so I would go to the networking groups, and what comes out of my mouth was usually a lot of what I was spending my time doing, which was self-discovery, floating in the float tank. I hired a shaman, and a shaman was working with me to tap into interesting parts of my mind that I wasn't open to prior. And I'm paying this guy to teach me how to meditate. I'm flying down to South America to learn this new skill. And so next thing the next networking event, there's 10 people around me. And then the next time there's 20. And then the next time there's 30. And then I remember one time we had a bit of a smaller group, but the entire group were in like a circle, and everyone was just like rapid fire questions about what this shaman was doing to me. And my referrals just took off. Business that year 3x in like
Wow.
10 months. I mean, it just went sky high. So what I learned, Josh, was that people want to do business with people, not businesses. And that is
Mm.
why I'm able to pivot into any industry at all, because yes, I need to find people who are good at delivering the product of whatever the product is that I'm offering or selling. But in the end, one thing I know for sure is we're all here having a human experience. And so if you make what you are and what you talk about, the human experience of being seen, being heard, being admired, being comfortable, being at peace, achieving a place of being where you're not at pressure, where you're truly able to be yourself. You being on that journey, even if you're just one step ahead, or I wouldn't even say you need to be ahead, just being on the same journey as other people who guess what humans are on that journey. 100% of them.
Yeah.
And so that's how I'm able to, that's the shortest way I could say of I'm able to get into any industry now because as long as humans are either buying the product, creating, as long as humans are all involved, which humans are the ones who have money, so they're always involved. I can essentially get into any business I want now because it's not the product I'm focused on, Josh. It's the humanity of it all. And that's why AI doesn't threaten me either, because AI will never be human. And so everyone's all worried about this. I'm not, because the one thing I've been obsessed with for the past 3.5 years is what humans are, what humans want, and why we exist. And to me, it's time we stop separating business and humanity and we reintegrate the two.
I love it. That's a great takeaway. So I'm curious, Roland, it seemed like to me as you're telling that story, you were trying to grow your business kind of like you were performing, right? The
Right.
perfect facilities, the perfect logo. I could only imagine your perfectly dressed attire, and you were performing. And then when you gave up the performance and you started being authentic, which if I tie that back to your childhood story, you were performing for your family and not being authentic. But when you gave that up and became authentic, it was like, oh, now everything started to work. Do those parallels exist there? Do you see
It's
that? Do you
yeah,
agree with
it's
that?
the way I describe it. We talk about it in our coaching program this way. It's like at some point, and this happens to almost everyone. So I can speak to this like pretty much globally because you did it. I've never met somebody who didn't do it. There was a point at some time, and whether it was 4 years old, 8 years old, 12 years old, 15 years old, so it can even happen in adulthood. You abandon you abandon trusting yourself and you start running programs that you believe are advantageous.
Mm,
And it's that day that life starts to become really unfulfilling because we aren't hardwired to run programs. We're hardwired to do human things. And so the second that you say, you know what, I'm not going to be human anymore, and you dehumanize yourself, um, you know what happens there, Josh? You begin to dehumanize others by accident because the second you can't recognize the humanity in yourself, you stop seeing it in others, and that's why we see some of these people, they become really disconnected, and it's not their fault. It's just they become more interested in running programs than in what's actually going on here, and it just gets a lot harder. I'm not saying you can't succeed running programs. You can. I did it. It's very, very laborious. It's unfulfilling, and in my opinion, it's unsustainable. You will tap out, and by tap out, I'm not saying you'll run out of energy and not be able to do it. You just might destroy your marriage or two or three or four. The fallout can come in different ways. But yeah, at some point everyone abandons humanity and chooses programs. They get obsessed with the books, the podcasts. That's why you'll never see me on a podcast telling someone what to do, because I did too much of that and it
mm,
made things harder on me. So I'd rather anchor in principles that anyone can apply. That way you find your own roadmap. Don't listen to me and follow what I did. That's why I'm very careful on telling people what I did or what I do, because that's not the point. The point is I have tapped into my own humanity, which allows me to see the humanity in others. And because humans are the ones with money, business has become a lot easier, right? So I guess that would be my best way of explaining it.
it's a great explanation. So how do you do that, Roland? Like, what's the process if it's human nature to fall into these programs? How do you deprogram yourself and get back to your humanity?
So it's actually not human nature. If you look at it, we are hardwired and there's evidence galore to prove this. We are hardwired to co-regulate with other humans. That's our first line of defense. So we at birth we go there, and we learn to stop going there because it doesn't work. And the only
Mm,
reason it doesn't work is our parents didn't co-regulate them, and so they don't know how to do it. And so what's co-regulation? Just for those of you who are unfamiliar with this, co-regulation is basically the concept of the second you're off of baseline and you feel stressed in any way, stressed, depressed, confused, worried, scared, whatever it is. The second you're off of baseline, your first line of defense should be going to a friend, a peer, a parent, going to a human and saying, "Hey, human, I am feeling this and this and this. Can you make me feel better?" Now, obviously, you're not going to word it that way, but that's essentially the vibe.
yeah.
Um, And then the human would make an attempt, because we are wired not just to want to be co-regulated, but we're wired to co-regulate others. How many, I mean, there's every listener on this podcast, how much would you love for your employees, your friends, your spouse, someone to come to you and say, hey, I'm having a hard time, can you help? I mean, we would love, I don't know about you, but I would love the opportunity
For
for that.
sure.
And that's in our nature. So it's not in our nature to abandon that. It's in our nature to do it. We learn to abandon it through a bunch of failed attempts. And so that's the challenge with our parenting, when beliefs are forced upon us. When you say, hey, mom and dad, I really don't want to go to the soccer game. The girls there make me feel so uncomfortable. I really hate it. I don't. And then they say, oh yeah, that must be really hard. Have you tried this? Yeah. And then, an hour goes by, it's getting closer and closer to 3 p.m. Hey, mom, I still don't want to go. I really, really, mom, dad, I don't want to go. I really, the coach even makes me feel, I just feel so uncomfortable there. I hate it. What's the parent's conclusion? Honey, you need to go anyways. And if we really didact what we're doing with that, is you're saying, I don't care about how you feel. I know better than you. And that sounds like an innocent example, but parents do this all the time, all the time. People listening to this have done that. And it's not really, if we think about what we're saying, is we're saying, no one cares about how you're feelings. There's things you need to do in this world. And so with enough repetition of that, by the time you're 10 years old, everything that makes the kid human has been ripped out of them. They learn that no one cares about how they feel. They learn that expressing themselves and expressing their desires only matters if it aligns with the agenda of the individuals around you. And so, usually it's not uncommon by 12 for the humanity to have been, I'm not going to say ripped out because it's still in there, but no longer do they try to co-regulate and express themselves. They now are hunting for, okay, well, if this is how the world works, what do I need to become? And that's when the programming starts. So it's not actually our nature. We just start giving up and bypassing it and going into programs because everything that's inside of us is hasn't worked. And so the second it stops working, we adapt, we change as humans. You give up on that pattern, you go right into just running programs. And so yeah, we've gotten really, I'm not a particular religious person, but the Bible speaks about this, and so do the Buddhist teachings, like all these religious teachings talk about this conflict of staying true to self and buying into the collective beliefs of others. So this has been a problem that's been going on for thousands of years. So, I'm not saying we need to be ashamed of it or anything. It's just, this has been an ongoing issue that appears, judging by all the books written about it, appears to be a very difficult cycle to break.
Above all else, know thyself, right?
Right on the temple of Apollo. Yep, exactly. Right.
So what's your process for that, bro? Like what, I mean, I'm assuming you still fall into some of those modes every
Oh
now
yeah.
and then. What's your practice for taking a step back and getting to know yourself again?
So all these, you're gonna read these books and you're gonna sign up for a lot of these things, and all of them have really genius elements. Don Miguel Ruiz, Eckhart Tolle from the '80s, who's still alive. These people will say these things and they're very true and they're spot on. The issue is they may only have like 10% of the recipe that you need. But another person might go there and that was like a 30% of the recipe for them. So they'll go around to tell their friend and be like, "Oh, this guy has the recipe." Well, for you, it might only be 10. And so what's going to happen is there's all these things and they're going to access pieces of that recipe. Here's been the hack for me, at least to where I've been able to do this at 35, is rather than accepting all of that as truth and getting what I could, I did something different, Josh. I grabbed that 10% and threw it into the formula. And then when I found the 2% over here, I threw that into the formula and I grabbed this 10% and I invented something actually called the InDesign formula. And it wasn't perfect out of the gates because at first it was built for me to live my life. Well, when I saw it, my life changed dramatically in every way. I basically had a formula to be able to change my mind and therefore change my reality very quickly. I could do it in a matter of days, sometimes hours. Then the question became, wow, could I teach this to others? And so again, because it was built for me, was the first few years that I have to figure out how to apply it to others? Because it was built for a very angry, entrepreneur,
Hmm.
this angry kid. So I had to build it for, a sad person. I had to build it for somebody who was hiding a secret for their entire life. I had to build it. So I had to like be able to have this formula encompass all of these things. This is a whole separate podcast in itself to get into it, but essentially you need to find out what is your formula from source, who you really are, to where this world that you think you live in, and what went into you thinking that the world's this way. Because we know you're wrong, right? Because Josh, you have a different worldview than me. I have a different worldview than you. How is it? Who's right? Well, you expand that to 7 billion. Well, 7 billion people have 7 billion different worldviews. So the one thing we know for sure is no one's right. There is no right or wrong. And I think if you can just embrace that concept and really start taking ownership over the creation of your reality and what you believe to be true about yourself and others and success and why we're here, for you, unbiased from other people, that would be my best way of answering that question, is make your own formula. At a certain point, you got to, Seth Godin's my favorite influencer, without question. I've read all of his books at least 50 times each. And one thing he says over and over and over is there is no map. And the longer you keep waiting for a map, the longer you'll be unfulfilled or poor. It's just, at a certain point, you run out of map and you need to write one for you. And I admire him so much because his advice, he's never met me and I've never met him, but his advice in those books, they changed my life.
That's awesome. He writes a daily blog, by the way,
Yeah.
for free. It's
Best
sometimes
blog.
only 20 words
Yep.
long. So anybody's interested, go to just Google Seth Godin and sign up for his daily email. They're brilliant. Something you said, Roland, reminded me of something that my coach, Tim Brahim, says repetitively over and over. And it's something to the effect of, be curious and don't believe everything you think. And I love that. I love that framework because I can get in the habit of running a program and thinking, well, this is the only way, right? But if I allow myself to be curious and to say, I'm just going to allow myself to not believe everything I think for a minute and, what else could be true? 9 times out of 10, I'm like, oh, well, actually, there's 11 ways I could figure out how to do that instead of just one if I would just, zoom out and be curious. So I love where we're headed, bro. Thanks for sharing the wisdom thus far. I want to talk to you a little bit about tough times because people in the industry that you and I are in are experiencing over the last 2 years as tough, if not the toughest time ever in their professional careers and in this industry. So my first question to you is, could you share a story of what might have been your toughest time from a professional standpoint or personal, whatever you want to share, and how you got over it, and maybe the lesson on the other side? I'd love to hear that from you.
Oh man, I have to be careful here because the one I want to say just deserves more time than this. To be honest, it would be a disservice to the story and others to tell it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to speak to it because it's affected me in my life on 3 separate occasions, the same issue in different capacities. And so I'm going to speak a little bit more globally so it can apply to everyone here. But there will be points in your life where you are wrong, and there's 2 ways to look at it. You can either be a victim of the circumstance that happened to you, or you can understand that everything that happens to you, you made a series of choices for this to have the impact on you. And what I mean by that is, let's for ease of explanation, let's say money. If you lose all your money, let's say you've lost all your money, got into a position where the money's gone. The only reason that's devastating is because of the value you have placed on your home and all of these things that money can provide. As long as the story exists that you're a bad parent because you lost the money, as long as the story exists that this is shameful and that you are a failure because this occurred, it's the narratives that make it hard. And a lot of people are going to listen to this and just like turn off the podcast. They're going to be like, well, I have kids and we're now homeless and this is a real big problem. I am not diminishing I am not diminishing the stress of that situation. We know that safety is a human need, and when that becomes threatened, um, there's a reason it's a need. It's because there's problems at hand. These people are cold, they're homeless, they're without shelter, they're without food. So I'm not belittling the problem, but I'm just saying it's the emotional nuclear bomb that's going off can be minimized down to, we are not safe. What do we need to do tonight? And that's really not that difficult of a decision to make. So I know I'm being vague and I'm not speaking to like a particular issue, but I will just say this: every time I find myself humiliated at rock bottom, what I have learned, and luckily I have had shamans and coaches in my life when these things have happened to me, um, they were able to, and I know this sounds unfair, I was able to escape the damnation that usually has on people. I was able to escape it. And I know people are going to be really mad at this and be like, oh, you've never truly suffered. I was able to escape it in a week. But let me explain what I mean by that is I was still in it. So if whatever the thing was, I was still, the havoc that tragedy was wreaking on my life was happening every single day, right? When my father passed away when I was young, he died, and that was the way it was. He was still dead the next week, right? So I'm not saying my shaman brought him back to life. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the significance of his death didn't have the same damning significance it did the week before. The bankruptcy is only as damning as you make it damning. I mean, shoot, I don't, what billionaire hasn't gone bankrupt a handful of times on the road to the top, right? So it's like it's the narrative attached that makes it so devastating. Whereas if you look at the facts, my father passed. I don't have any money in my bank account. It's not really that damning of a situation. It just requires an action the next day. And again, I'm not saying it's no less stressful. It's not hard. I'm not belittling any of that, but I think that's how I would choose to answer that question is,
Great
when
answer.
that happens to you, there's very little you can, usually when we're in those situations, there's very little you can do at that point. And so that's why I'm choosing to answer in this way is once you're there, you're pretty much there. And so people call it acceptance. I don't like acceptance because it sounds so simple, but really what it is what's your narrative attached to how awful this situation is and how crushing this is and how demoralizing this is and how you're never going to be a respectable member of society. Truth is, there's a lot you can still do after a bankruptcy. A lot of multimillionaires made their millions in like 3 years, just from hitting the right idea at the right time with the max motivation. And a lot of them came out of a hard time or a bankruptcy. So that's how I'll choose that answer that question is when it happens, it sucks. I'm not saying it doesn't, but what I'm saying is let's look at the situation. Let's really examine this narrative attached, because I think the longer you attach to this sad, depressing, brutal narrative, you're just missing the opportunities to get out of it faster. And I'm not saying to like not feel pain. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, in the end, if you're going through a hard time, the fastest way to get out of it is to do the things to get out, do the things to get out of it. And the more you focus on those and you detach from the stories that make it so hard, your situation changes a lot faster. But again, it doesn't diminish how hard it is.
Such an important lesson. And let me try to say it back to you and you tell me if you think I got it. It's not the thing. It's not the divorce. It's not the bankruptcy. It's not that my business went from me being uber successful to me considering myself to be, barely making it or not making it or a failure. It's not the thing. It's the attachment to the thing.
Correct.
And if you let go of the attachment to the thing, then the thing no longer has power over you. You essentially retain or regain your power. You're not an effect of the thing if you can let go of the attachment.
Yeah, I mean, the difference is this simple. One guy goes bankrupt. He is now a failure and a disgrace.
Because he's attached to that thing.
Yeah, it's an identity now. It's an identity. The other guy says, well, I ran out of money. So now what? I mean, again, the pain of the situation doesn't change, but it does in a sense that the first guy I mentioned could go months, if not years. I mean, he may never rebound depending on what his narrative is. The other guy
So
accepts the
good.
situation. They lose the house. They have to find some sort of living situation. It still sucks just as much as with the other guy. But again, the likelihood of him achieving his success that he was just at in with his new, because that's the thing, your mind wasn't taken from the bank, didn't take your mind from you. You still have all the lessons that you had on the way there. So you basically get this second shot with, it's that saying that's like, oh, would you go back to like kindergarten with the brain you have now? It's like, yeah, you would kick ass. You'd like come out of high school with like $2 million. It's similarly, the bank doesn't take your mind. And so, it's really, as devastating as the temporary situation is, and it may last a year or two, the odds of you getting out of it with less attachment, the odds of you escaping goes way, 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 way up.
Love it. Such a great lesson. Thank you, brother. All right. I want to make sure in our time that we have left together, Roland, that we hit on something that I've heard you say several times. And that is something to the effect that that the new economy is purpose driven. And I'd like to start out by saying, okay, well, if the new economy is purpose driven, relate that back to what the old economy is. What is the transition that you're seeing, and define what the old economy is compared to the purpose-driven new economy, if you would.
Yeah, and it's a great topic, and Josh, you embraced, whether you knew it or not, you've embraced the purpose economy quite well, and you're being rewarded for it. The early economies, we had real problems. We did not have food. Like that was a problem. And so we needed to find some way to farm and then keep our food good through the winter months. So all the attention was towards efficient way of farming and efficient way of storing food. Soon that became a non-issue, right? It was like, oh, okay, where everyone's cycling crops, all of a sudden, like corporations came in. And it's like, well, I'm going to borrow money from the bank, and I'm going to start farming with banks' money, and then and so this was kind of how we got to this early formation of the industrial economy, right? Well, and then we transitioned into the, what I call the safety economy. And that was where we saw a lot of like inventing going on, right? The refrigerator or the ice box, depending on, the running water, the lights. So we were starting to solve bigger problems, right? Okay, how can we not die when we're like 37? How can a human like live to be like 70 or 80 years old? Well, then those problems got solved, right? And so then we had factories, we had massive farming companies producing food. So all of a sudden, the scarcity of a lot of these things went away. And that's the thing, and you got to follow that trend. Economies follow scarcity. They've always have from the beginning. The word economy, actually, Latin root is scarcity. That the word economy, it comes from scarcity. And so economies follow whatever's scarce. That's what people want, the thing that's hard to get. And so as we migrated through these economies, we went into the connection economy. So now we got factories, we got farms. Well, we have too many inventions. So we needed awareness. So that was TV advertising, radio advertising, the internet, the birth of the salesman and the saleswoman, right? It was all about connecting people with a problem to a business with a solution. And then that went on for a while in the heyday. I mean, skyscrapers. I mean, that was just part of like the world's like biggest boom. And what we did in 100 years was just incredible. And from 1920 to 2020, I mean, like, wow, like I don't even know how we built it in 100 years. It's quite incredible. Well, we're running into a different problem now, right? We weren't seen. We weren't heard. No one had a voice. The world was so busy. Everyone was insignificant. So we saw this, what I call the esteem economy was birthed. And then the esteem economy, it was all about getting a voice. So we saw Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, webinars, podcasts, all these platforms to come to add voices back to humans, because we were pretty safe. Right? We had very little problems at that point in time. Now it was being more human. And so we were kind of coming out of this economy right after the pandemic, where we really have no shortage of platforms to express ourselves. We have no problems as a society. We're spending our time solving, now we're blasting internet satellites into space and making cars. And we're solving new problems now because we've ran out of basic problems to solve. And so we're at this like ceiling of problems. We're at the ceiling of attention. People are running out of attention for the new platforms. So platforms are being started and failing because we just have an attention capacity. So we've reached kind of what looks like, obviously things are going to advance, but we've reached what looks like this capacity for the first time in humanity. What a cool time to be alive. This first time where we're really cresting, where people are like going to the store and seeing something neat and not buying it because it's just like, yeah, I mean, do I really need that problem to be solved? I mean, it's a really cool time to be alive. We're actually like really wondering, do I want to create an account on that new platform? I mean, it's just, it's exciting. But we ran into a new issue because what happens when humans have no problems? There's one need that's left. Who am I? Why am I here? Why are humans here? What's my purpose? What's my calling? And so I call this new economy the purpose of calling, because if we follow the trend, what's the new scarcity? Do I matter? Do I do anything? When I die, will anyone miss me, or will someone just step into my place? And that is the new crisis that we are facing. And so I want to speak to the purpose economy for any business professional, because if you're in business, you want to be the one who has the scarce thing. Those are the people who succeed. Those are the people who get the referrals. Those are the people who get the most attention. Those are the people who get the most money. In the purpose economy, it's the most exciting economy ever, because your job is to find your purpose. Oh my gosh, does anyone just hear? Did you just hear what I just said? Like what a fantastic time to be alive. If you want to thrive and succeed, the only thing you need to do is figure out what your purpose is, what your calling is, and own it. And then everyone will notice that you have found yours. And why does that matter to them? Because it's what they want to find. You will have the one thing that that our whole country is desperate for. And if you're looking at the people who are the most well-known influencers right now, that's why they have the followers they have. They've tapped into something supernatural that everyone wants. And I call it the purpose economy. So it's a I don't care if you're a real estate agent, a mortgage professional. If your job depends on connecting, if success depends on connecting on a deep, intimate level with other people, you finding your purpose in this new economy, it's the answer. And I just think what an honor it is to be, people have been dying and sacrificing their lives up to this point to get us here. And so, to me, if you're not excited by what I just said, then get excited by honoring everyone who suffered up to this point to elevate the humanity to get here where this is our biggest issue. To me, there's this clip at the end of Saving Private Ryan where he says, "Earn this," after everybody died trying to save this one guy. And I kind of feel like that now with the purpose economy, is it's like, earn it. And you know what we're doing instead? We're scrolling and watching Netflix, and here we are in arguably the greatest time to be alive, and we have all the time in the world, and we're squandering it, and it doesn't sit right with me.
That's why you have purpose, my friend.
Yeah, that's
right. Oh man, that was deep. And it makes me go back to kind of this theme that I'm noticing with you, where you made a decision to not be authentic. I think you said at 4 years old, and now you are on a mission to help people become authentic and find their purpose and live that life. That's such a beautiful full circle, brother.
That decision at 4 made me rich, but it also came at a cost of pretty much everything. And if I could go back, it wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth it.
Wow, that is a powerful, powerful way to end this. And I think that is the right place to end it right there, because I think that was really powerful. Roland, thank you, man. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being in your heart. Thank you for sharing, like, just so beautifully. It's always cool to connect with you. And every time we interact, I realize, like, we need to hang out more. But Roland's in Poland or Thailand or 4 hours south of me in Costa Rica, and I can't get to him. But somehow we need to get into the same continent and
I know I come to your hometown, and then it's the one time you're out of town.
I know, and then I'm out of the country. It's gonna happen, dude. It's gonna happen.
We will. We'll make it happen.
So, buddy, I have a feeling there's some people that listen to this that you hit it right in the bullseye, and they go, "Holy shit, that's what I'm missing, or that's what I need." So, how do people find, follow, and get a hold of you?
Yeah, so my handle on Instagram is Roland Cochrun. I'm a pretty accessible guy. Just shoot me a little voice message on there or message on there. That's probably the best way. If you're a Facebooker, you can do it on there as well. I mean, shoot, you can send me an email, roland@rolandcochran.com. If you want to email me. But I'm a pretty accessible dude. My only hustle is my coaching business, my only hustle. So it's the only thing I do. I own a lot of other stuff, but I've people taking care of those businesses. This humans get my full attention now. And so yeah, if you resonated with anything that I said, I'd love to hear your story.
So fantastic. And also his website is, I believe it's rolandcochran.com, is it not?
Yep, it is.
Yeah, and
Yep, first
there's
name,
a
last
bunch
name.
of great info there.
Mhm.
Roland, it's a pleasure as always, my friend. Thank you for being here. And this is a great way to kick off 2024 on the Infinite Financial Freedom Podcast. So thank you, brother.